In this episode of NRL Fantasy School, we're going to be looking at a topic very close to my heart, and that is wingers. Now, the first thing I'm going to say about wingers in NRL Fantasy, it's completely different to Supercoach. Now, I actually see a lot of kind of crossover similarity in players that are good for fantasy and good for Supercoach. And running through the positions, let me just open fantasy up quickly for a second here. We run through the positions. Hooker, there's a lot of a lot of crossover. The top hookers in fantasy tend to be up there in Supercoach as well. Middle forwards, definitely. Second rows, definitely. They allocate differently in Supercoach. They have locks as second rows. In fantasy, we have locks as middles. Um, Halves, there's a lot of similarity. There can be a little bit of difference when kicking meters become a big factor for certain players in fantasy, as opposed to attacking stats in Supercoach. But on the whole, there's a lot of similarity there. Where the differences really lie, fullbacks, there's definitely a lot of crossover between fantasy and Supercoach in terms of who the top players are. But where it really absolutely massively differences between the two platforms is centres and wingers. And the reason for that is fantasy is very much broad in the stat set that is rewarded, and doesn't reward try scoring and try assists as highly as Supercoach. And Supercoach really awards tries and try assists, line breaks, etc. So that's where we get an awful lot of disparity between the two games, is particularly with centres and wingers. So today we're mainly going to look at wingers. Centres are very much everything we talk about today largely applies to centres as well. Good thing to keep in your mind, centres typically average about 4 points more than wingers at the moment with the way the game currently is. So that is, if you take a player like Selwyn Cobbo who can play centre or wing, you're probably going to get about 4 points difference in his centre average versus his wing average, is a good rule of thumb to keep in mind. But what we're going to have a look at first of all is a couple of players that in Supercoach really score well, but in fantasy just don't translate, just to really make the point. So let's go straight to one of the top try scorers in the game in Alex Johnston. So I'm going to go to his analytics page, not his game log page, because that really highlights everything a lot better. Now, from earlier episodes, we talked about what you're looking at in various positions. For wing fullbacks, your final team's going to have players that are averaging 50 plus. They're really what you want to get to. In terms of a starting squad, you want players that have a good, clear 10 points of value in them. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that and why I actually make it 15 for wingers as we go through this episode. But if we have a look at Alex Johnson, who's been one of the top try scorers in the game, you can see that he's not getting anywhere near that final team 50 target in terms of his fantasy point output. And year to year, he's never really had any years where he's had 10 points value in him either. So he's just completely fantasy irrelevant. Okay. Now, if we have a look at, I want to hone in for a minute on just 2 years in particular. 2021, the year of the Six Again Fest, and 2022, where he had a try strike rate of 142% and 121%. And he's averaged both of those seasons, let's just call it 40 in the middle. Okay. Let's have a look at Greg Marzu, totally different type of winger. And if we go back to his 2023 season, he averaged 50 plus with 100% try scoring strike rate. So a little bit less than Alex Johnson's two boom years, significantly more in points. If we look at his season last year, he didn't have a Knights were horrible in attack last year. So he only had a 33.3% try scoring strike rate. One try in every 3 games is all he came up with. And yet he averaged more than Alex Johnston did in both of those 2 years with his try strike rates up around 120, 140%. Okay. Now, the reason for this comes down to two real key factors. Their base, particularly the meters gained, and the tackle breaks. So you can see when he averaged 53 for the year, he had a base of 23.25 and he had what was almost over eight tackle breaks per game. So if we go back to Alex Johnston for a second, okay, we can see the lower base not even getting to 20, and we can see his tackle breaks 2-3 a season, 2-3 a game. Okay, and those 2-3 a game are generally pretty much the majority of his awarded tackle breaks are actually coming when he scores a try. So you get over in the corner, you get through a defender, you get the tackle break. That's where most of Alex Johnson's tackle breaks have come from. Now, last year we're very cautious with talking preseason about wingers because we understand the stuff that I'm going to talk about in this episode quite well. Last year we did not hold back on young Tamale. Let's talk about why. If I go to Tamale's reserve grade history, so I'm going to go to his game log and we're just going to have a look at his win games from 2023-24. And this is what we went looking for. Straight off the bat, we can see he's got a high average and pretty reasonable floor. His lowest score there was 22, but we have to take that with a grain of salt because this is New South Wales Cup. He was in a team that were ranked 5 to 8 in 2024. Okay, but what we really honed in on is over in his base. What we're looking for is high meters gained, and he's averaging 200 meters a game in New South Wales Cup. Okay, and high tackle breaks. His tackle breaks, look at that, 9 a game. So we were all over this kid right from the very start as soon as we looked over his numbers, because he's exactly what you want to be looking for in a cash cow winger. Okay. Now, not all cash cow wingers are going to be totally off the charts like this kid was. Okay. But what we definitely don't want to be seeing is let's have a look at Jalen de Groot in reserve grade. Again, we're just going to look at his win games. Okay. And what we don't want to be seeing is these low floors. Okay. Scores of 5, scores of 11. His meters per game, 72. Markedly different. His tackle breaks, bugger all. Okay. If you're seeing, no matter what their try scoring output is, okay, he's two tries this game, still only scored 25 points. Try this game, 32. Try here, 14. Okay. So no matter what their actual try scoring output is, unless you're seeing healthy meters gained and some real power, some real tackle break potential, they're a real recipe. They're just trap city, absolute trap city. Okay. Now the next, we're going to have a look at a trap city from last year in the shape of Jesse Arthurs. Now, did anyone listening actually go chasing after Jesse Arthurs last year? Well, one thing that I'm always sort of debating people with, and it's not really a debate, it really is fact, but a bit of Tunning-Kruger syndrome creeps in with people sometimes. You're really, really confident you know, but you really, really don't. And that is, I'm always trying to explain to people that break-evens are not a measure of value in a player. A low break-even does not mean a player has high potential value in them. In fact, a player can have a very low break even and actually be overpriced and about to plummet price-wise. And that's what we're going to see real life here in Jesse Arthurs. Now, before I go into that little segue, let's just have a look at his history prior to last year. So I'm just going to go back to analytics again. So analytics is generally the page that I stay on when I'm happy with summary information, and game log when I want to go have a look at what's kind of happening game by game. But a lot of the time I just spend my time in analytics. Only interested in win games, and I'm going to ignore 2025 as if it hasn't happened yet. Look at his 22, 23, 24 as if we were coming into the season last year, and we can see here he was priced at around 300k because he's worth around 300k. Okay, his average in 2023 was 26, average in 2024, 25. So there's consistency there. He's not a tackle buster. He doesn't have a good base. So there's really nothing there to go chasing after. Okay. Now he started the season hot. Was he a miss, or was he still a okay player that I really didn't regret picking up? I'm actually going to use the footy statistics page for a second, and only because they've got price and break even. And I'm actually going to bring price and break even round by round into our stats set for Fantasy and Supercoach this year. So, from this year forward, I won't need to go to them at all. But just for the purpose of that, let's pull up Jesse Arthurs. You can see I was looking at him earlier before already. Just going to have a look at 2025. Okay, now he started hot. Started with a try and 53 points round one, 3 tries for 55 points round two, another try for 38 points round three. Okay, there was a bit of running meme war between myself and a couple of guys during the season last year, where I started out saying Jesse Arthurs was mud, and they kept coming back, and I kept on going back saying, well, no, Jesse's still mud. I'm standing by it. Now, as it turned out, let's see how things actually ended. If you started with Jesse Arthurs, you were paying 375k at the start of the season. Okay. Where's his max price for the year? Well, it's certainly not up here anywhere. His max price for the year was 482k. So if I started with Jesse Arthurs and I happened to sell him right at his peak, I would have made 107k, which is less than what my target is. My target for a player is 10 points plus value, which is roughly 130k. So absolutely, though I had no regrets at any stage not getting on Jesse Arthurs at the start of the season, I didn't miss anything. Okay, there was no significant massive FOMO value there. Now let's have a look at the break-even situation though. He scores 53 round one, 55 round two. His round break-even in round three was 5 points. Now, if you went chasing after that break-even, what happens? Well, you're paying 466k for him, and he makes 16k with a score of 17. And then he loses 2k with a score of 30, and he's back on his way down. So this is exactly what I was saying before. The player can have a low break even, but actually have negative value in them. They can actually have a low break even, be overpriced, because the break even is being contributed to by a couple of outlier high scores running together. Okay. Now, break evens are connected to two things: the player's price, well, three things: the player's price, how many points they should be averaging at that price, and a weighted average of their past 1, 2, 3, 4 games, with recency counting most. Okay, so we have these two games very recent. Now this game's starting to fall away. This game's starting to fall away a bit more. So as we go forward, those boom scores aren't contributing as much to his break-even equation, and his recent scores are starting to dominate. Okay, so the top players in fantasy use break-evens for one reason and one reason only, and that is timing of trades. What we look at is how many points is the player currently priced at, and what's a realistic average for them over the next 6 weeks or so, and what's the difference between that. If a player is currently priced at, say, 27 points, and their realistic average over the next six to 8 weeks is going to be up around 40, then there's 14 points of value that'll be realised. Okay, what we use break even for is timing those trades. So if a player is pretty much near their peak, if the players, we see them as being 40-point player and we've made a bit of money off them and their break even's now up to 38, then that's when we're looking at moving on them. Okay. If a player has crashed, so rather than booming for a couple of weeks to get to a low break even, if they've crashed for a few weeks and they've reached that bottom point where now their break evens gone back lower, then the timing is there. That's what we're looking at the break even for, to time the move. So don't look at break evens to tell you what player to get or not to get, because it really doesn't tell you anything about the value in the player at all. What you want to look at is what's their price, how many points are they priced at. This is what our platform's fantastic for. And what's their expected average over the next so many weeks, and what does that come to? What's the potential value there in real terms? And then look at the break even against what their likely score is to make the decision, is this the week to pull the button? Do I hold off another week or two? Okay. Now let's have a look at. Going to have a look at one other thing to do with wingers is Jermaine Asako and Dylan Watene-Zelezniak. So we can say goodbye to the Footy Stats site now. So let's have a look at Jermaine Asako, who had a really strong year in his first year at the Dolphins. Okay. So scores around the 27s to 30 to 28 was not very attractive at all. Um, there was some goal kicking in there. There was a bit more goal kicking in 2021 and 2019, but he picked up the permanent goal kicking spot in 2023. Now, I have to admit, I did not own Jermaine Asako during 2023 at all, and purely because, well, looking at these numbers, the goal kicking wasn't enough on its own to really thrill me. His try scoring strike rates, okay, 19, 30, 33%, 25%. But then in 2023, that jumped up to 100%. Now, Jermaine Asako's a right edge winger. Most teams are a bit more shaped to the left, or a lot more shaped to the left. It's quite unusual for a right edge winger to be having a try strike rate that high. And we can see that dropped right back off in 24 and 25. Now, when that happens, we want to have a look at a few things. We want to confirm the change in attacking shape, and then what's, you know, we could even just leave it at that, or we could consider, well, what's the difference? So one of the things that we actually keep our own stats with are try locations and try positions. So we're going to have a look at try locations for the Dolphins. Now, in 2025, 55% of their tries are scored through the left edge, 25% through the right. Now, this try locations, by the way, we credit the location as to being where the try really originated from, not where it actually crossed the try line. So if left edge players make the break, get to the fullback, pass inside to a support player who runs away from the defence and scores in the right hand corner, well, it might be scored in the right hand corner, but really it originated on the left, and that's what we give the credit to. Yeah. So we can see from here in 2025, it is the normal left, more left centric shaped attack. If we go back to 24, 24, yeah, it's still a little bit left dominant, but not as much. Okay, and if we go back to 23, 23, the right side attack is actually more dominant than the left. Now, a couple of things that could be contributing to that, and one of them is the really the way Herbie Farnworth has started coming on in the last couple of years. But a lot of it comes down to the way their spine has settled. Now, if we go back to 2023, Katoa was just coming on the scene, and Nicarima was kind of filling in here and there, and Sean O'Sullivan was playing quite a bit. So they had a very kind of interchangeable, unsettled kind of spine, and it turns out that they were playing right a bit. But the more over the last 2 years that it has become Katoa right and Nicarima left, the more their attacking shape has evolved to being a lot more left centric. So no, we're going to have to just call 2023 a bit of a freak year as far as the Sake goes on the wing. Let's have a look at the other one I want to have a look at is Dallin Watene-Zelezniak. So I'm going to go back to our analytics page quickly. Now, there are a couple of people. I think his ownership last looked was around 2%. So I think there are a couple of people that have talked themselves into Darwin being a bit of a POD for the year and having a bounce back to 23 numbers. In 2023, he averaged 41. He scored a try strike rate of 123%. Again, Darwin Watene-Zelezniak's a right-hand winger, same as Asako. Extremely unusual for a right-edge winger to have that high a try strike rate. And we can see that that's changed. He dropped off in 2024, dropped off again in 2025. Let's check out their attacking shape. So the Warriors in 20, let's go to 2023 first. Sorry, I'm in the wrong. That's try positions. I'm just going to try locations. So 2023, over half of their tries came through the right edge. More virtually close to double the tries scored through their left edge. Extremely unusual. Very, very rarely see those sort of numbers. Okay, let's have a look at 2024. It's starting to even up a little bit more. Okay, 44% through the right, 36% through the left. Coming into 2025. And 2025, it has pretty much got back to a kind of even split between the right and the left. Okay. Now, the easy answer to this is one player. What has changed the most with the Warriors' backs between 23 and then 24 and 25? Who's missing? So let's go back to his analytics. And only interested in his win games. So we've got this outlier of 42.19. Okay. But let's have a look at what the picture is like if I do this. Sean Johnson, okay, averaged 42 with Sean Johnson in how many games? 16 games. Dropped down to 38 over 14 games, 23-24. What I'm going to do now is exclude Sean Johnson. So if we take Sean Johnson out of the picture, he's starting to look a lot more consistent. 25 to 30 year to year. 2022 we could ignore because it was only a one game sample. So the outlier's gone. Okay. Very much that was the one difference in his boom season in 2023 was Sean Johnson. Okay. Sean Johnson just found ways to use that right edge a lot and DWZ benefited from it. But that's gone. So anybody out there, if you're thinking that Dallin Ratini-Zalesniak is in for a bounce back year, I'd highly recommend that you just kind of get those thoughts completely out of your mind because the chances of you seeing this happen are pretty much zilch. Yep, with the halves they've got and the shape they've got, that's just not going to happen. Okay, look, I hope that's given you plenty to think about. So the real takeaways from this episode, wingers. You really want players, healthy tackle breaks, healthy meter gains. You want players that are doing a lot of bring out work. So they're taking a lot of hard yards carries coming out of their own end. Okay. You definitely want more than Marzu and the Tamale type. You definitely don't want to be seeing wingers with a low under 20 base and low tackle breaks and low floors. Okay. And also, now for this very reason, and because of the high variance in scoring for wingers, I tend to look for a clear 15 points of value, not a clear 10 points of value. The problem of rookie wingers priced at 17 or so to begin with, they can average 27, but never really give you 10 points of value back because every time they get their break even moving in the right direction, they'll have one of those really floor games and that will just kill all the cash growth. So for that reason, I tend to have a rule of if I'm going to go for a winger or center, I want to clear 15 points of value, not to clear 10 points of value, because otherwise you're not going to get the value realization with their floor games just killing their cash growth all the time. Thanks for joining us. Tomorrow, if you're watching this the day it's recorded, we are one day out from the Vegas team drops. So tomorrow morning, I'm going to be putting out another episode focusing on my approach to building a team and how it differs from a lot of new fantasy players. So it'll be a very good episode to catch a look of. And tomorrow during the day, I'll be starting to do a bit more of our projection updates now that we've got a clearer idea from trials of what coaches' likely moves are. Most of our projections are pretty on point. We're one of the few that have had Joe Chan taking Eli Katoa's back edge right through the whole preseason, and that's eventuated. So yes, pat on the back to us on that one. Um, and tomorrow afternoon, as soon as those Vegas teams drop, we will actually be converting our projections for those four teams to match up with what the actual named teams are. So exciting times ahead. Really exciting times for what the real team building is about to start happening now. And if you haven't subscribed to our Fantasy Pro platform yet, well, all I can say is I hope that you're seeing plenty of the value in what we actually have to offer and how it can really help you in your enjoyment of fantasy. Thanks again. We'll catch you tomorrow.